Well, time to take care of some business this morning in our Taking Care of Business segment. We welcome Deb Eckelberger from the Titusville Community Development Agencies. Boy, that's a mouthful, Deb. You got to work on that this year.
TCDA is so much easier.
So much easier. Yeah, that's right. Well, who'd you bring with you today? This guy looks familiar.
We have Will. He's from Great Eastern Cutlery, and he's here to tell us all about that fantastic business and what they do here in our local community.
Well, good morning.
Morning.
Good to see you.
You too.
How you been?
Okay.
Busy. Yeah. How'd 2015 wrap up for you? Busy year? Good year?
Very good. It's probably one of our best years.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Let's learn a little bit about yourself and the company.
Well, this year actually marks our 10th year, our 10th anniversary, which is a big year. And that'll happen later this summer. But we're located down beside these guys now. The TC whatever.
That's
TC
right.
whatever. That's better yet. Yeah.
A redevelopment authority.
Yeah,
there you go.
We're in what some people would remember as the old metallurgy lab for Cyclops. So it's down there at the Blinker Light by Burgess. And down there we manufacture traditional pocket knives. And you can see a couple of those. I brought some examples here in front of us. We do everything, pretty much everything in-house, and we produce old-style knives.
So go back to the start of the company. Obviously, there's some history there. Your dad has been in this business for a while. Talk about that a little bit. It's not like you just woke up one day and said, hey, let's just make knives.
Yeah, it's not that easy. It's a much more complicated thing than one would imagine. But
he's been doing it a long time, right?
Yeah. So, actually last year he kind of told some folks at the shop that it was his 40th year, I believe, making knives. So he worked at the other cutlery company in town, and when he was very young, and later on in life decided that he would rather have his own business. And, so in 2006 we opened.
Now, did you know that you also had a passion for making knives, or that you liked this, or was this something that you kind of did on the side and then ended up just wanting to continue to do? When
I helped him when we first opened, it was obviously opening your own business is a very complicated thing, and so I helped out initially when we were starting out, and it wasn't until later that I started working on the production line, and that's a lot of what I do now. And it's pretty satisfying to do something every day, then be able to see the result that you make, and it's very much an art form to the people that work there. And
I think people would be surprised to find that it's not just machine making these things and shooting them out. I mean, hands are being touched on every one of these knives, every piece.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really what keeps us in business. So over the past 30 or 40 years, many of the big cutlery companies were basically closing down or outsourcing much of their product and really narrowing down, streamlining the knife as much as possible. And we basically did the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. So we employ 23 or 24 people at the shop.
Wow.
And there are 200 individual processes to make a pocket knife there.
Cool.
And every single one of those is a hands-on operation. And because of that, we make an extremely high-quality knife. And that's what sells our product. Yeah. There are a lot of people making cheap knives, and we're one of the few companies that makes a really nice knife.
So I want to go back, 23, 24 people. I think again, it's one of those things where people probably have heard the name, but don't really have an idea of what goes on, within those walls. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's say let's take one of the knives, and I think you've told me in the past that you guys will do maybe a run of maybe 200, 250 of a
Well, yeah, it's increased a little bit over the years. But yeah.
Right, but let's just say you're gonna design this knife and you're gonna just do 200 of these. Even within those 200, there could be some slight variations in the design. So while the overall look of it's the same, each one is still an individual knife.
Yeah, handcrafted for sure. And there's a lot of variation in regards to the handle materials that go on the knife. And by the time it's all said and done, any one of these knives that you see here in front of us, there may have been only 50 of those knives ever made that we made. At the shop, we only produce generally about 65 to 70 knives a day. We're not pumping out thousands at a time.
Right.
But
that's a constant. I mean, it's not like you got people just sitting on the side waiting. I mean, they're constantly working and putting out knives.
Yeah, and in regards to the type of knives we make, we spend a lot of time. History is a big thing for us, and especially my father, and local history. So we spend a lot of time making knives that used to be made. We're not necessarily we're doing the design work, but we're taking knives that were made 100 years ago that no one makes anymore and recreating them. And some of these are some examples of that. This knife here that we just produced recently is a knife that was issued to sailors in World War I.
Oh, wow.
It's a Navy knife. And I was telling Deb earlier, it's got this is called a bail. And they would attach a lanyard to this and attach it to their pants. So if they dropped their knife on the ship, it wouldn't go overboard. And the blade has
Here, lower it down just a little bit.
Sorry.
No.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the blade has a blunt point. So again, if the ship is moving and you slip, you're not going to accidentally stab somebody with the knife, but it still has a very nice edge on it. Yeah, so a lot of these old knives, they had very specific uses like that. And
so when you design something like that, are you finding a knife from that time, or are you going off of books? Or
sometimes we have people. There's a huge collector market for pocket knives. We quite often have people come in, and we have people come in from all over the country to see the shop, and they bring in old knives, and often we get to handle them before we make them. But we also have a ton of old cutlery catalogs that my father goes through, and they're to dimension, so he can get most of the stuff right from the catalogs. And,
wow.
And he's been doing it so long that he can recreate those.
So does he say, this is the one we want to make? Or does he come to you guys and say...
he's the boss.
Okay. Do you have any input on that? Do you say, well, you know what, Dad, I think this one would be a cool one to make?
On occasion, but normally I just get a...
What, do you have a knife that is an absolute favorite for you? Or are they all pretty special?
They're all pretty great, but the one I carry the most, and I don't actually have it with me today, but it's what we call a boy's knife, and a boy's knife was a knife that used to be made for a young person. It was made very tough, inexpensively, so that they could basically beat the snot out of the knife. Yeah.
That's something else to talk about is, you get a lot of collectors who are buying your knives, but you guys enjoy the folks who come in, buy the knives, and actually use them.
Yeah.
We had that conversation on the way in here. I have one it's called a French Kate, and it looks like a lady's boot.
Yeah, that was cool.
So it's great for a woman. I give them for graduation presents. I've given them for things like that. To a lady, I think it's nice to have. But I said, I use my knife all the time. I use it in the garden. It's not really a collector for me. It's something that I use. And I told him my husband will say, where's your pocket knife? Because he can never find his. And I'm like, no, you can't have it. I know right where it is because I use it all the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We make a very high quality knife, but first and foremost, we want people to use them, of course. And,
so describe the customer base that you have. Are they divided into categories then? I mean, do you have the collector side? Do you have the people that use them?
Well, there's a cross section there, so there are collectors who like to use them as well, but probably a good portion of them are sold to collectors. We have many distributors, some worldwide, and most of them sell through online retailers. No big store, brick and mortar stores or anything like that. Simply because of the price point of our product, but it's a pretty wide-ranging group of people, and it's growing daily. Yeah.
Even separate the knife for now. The packaging is pretty cool on these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we started, this was something my father Bill come up with. Traditionally, a pocket knife is boxed in a.
Hey, by the way, he's not here, so you can take all the credit for this.
They're typically traditionally done in a box, and this is something he come up with. And one of the, we try to do as much of everything in house that we can. So that means like these labels, for example, that you see here. This one here is called a Ben Hogan. You can see a picture of Ben Hogan, who's a local character here from the oil boom. And so we do all of our own labels and are printing these stories on the back, typically with the knives.
Do you find that do you get any feedback from somebody who says, somebody not from around here, and they buy the Ben Hogan and they learn about the history of?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we really love. We get a lot of people into the shop, literally from all over the country. We have an event every year called our Rendezvous, and people come up from Florida. We have a fellow that comes from Vancouver, Canada, every year, and they come around. They sit around for 3 days
on the picnic table outside.
They talk about
them.
pocket
It was
knives.
packed. It was amazing.
Yeah, but whenever we have people come into the shop, we always make sure we talk to them about, hey, what else are you doing? Because a lot of people that come up for us, just to come up see us, and we try to make sure that they're going to Drake Well, riding the train, doing as much of the stuff in the area as possible, because as you can see, we like to name some of our knives after local historical figures.
Well, I think that's great that, for such a an area that's rich in history, that you guys embrace that and you say, hey, boy, we can come up with some product around some of these characters.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I try to tell people is that not only we have a rich oil history, but pocket knives have been made in this area for a really, really long time, and most people don't realize that. Northwestern Pennsylvania and Western New York, most of America's cutleries can be traced back to this area.
Wow. This is the Morning Drill on Stream Television and the Allegheny News Talk Sports Network, taking care of business this morning with Great Eastern Cutlery. I'm sure that's an art form that's sort of dying out with, as you say, these other companies that are just pumping these things out through machines, and you guys still having that handmade and homemade touch to it. 23, 24 employees working on these things. When people come down and they visit with you, I'm sure you guys like to show off the shop, but I'm sure there's some aspects that you don't want everybody to know.
Yeah, we there's a lot of hand operations and a few other things that they've just fallen out of knowledge over the years. One thing in particular is bone. So this knife, let's see if I can get it in the camera here. This knife here has a cow bone handle, and we're one of the last companies that still does all their own bone work in-house.
Oh, wow.
And in particular, the jigging. So the jigging is the texture that's put into the surface of the bone. And back in the day, companies had particular patterns that they were able to achieve putting in the bone, and those were kind of top secret. They didn't want other companies to know how to do them, and we try to recreate a lot of those patterns, and those are basically done by hand, one handle at a time, the way we make them.
Wow.
And people just don't do that anymore.
So do people call you and ask for you guys to make certain pieces for other knives, or do you guys say, no, we're going to make our own?
We don't make pieces for other people's, not necessarily. We are a factory, so we on occasion produce other people's brands, much like other factories do, but 90% of the stuff we produce are our own brands of pocket knives. Yeah.
Brag a little bit. What's some of the feedback you hear from your customers?
Well, if you ask me and a lot of our customers, I think we make the best pocket knife on the market. And one of the things that people tell us, or that I hear the most, is that nowadays when you buy a pocket knife like this, you can't necessarily walk into a store like Walmart and look at the knife and buy it. And to pocket knife people, they want to be able to pick the knife up, and they want to be able to open it, they want to be able to feel it in their hands, they want to be able to look at it for any defects. That's a big thing to them. And so a lot of those people don't necessarily like buying online because they don't have that physical interaction with the product. But with our product, our knives, we make them to such high quality that they have almost no qualms purchasing that knife sight unseen and knowing that they're going to get
Wow.
a quality product. And that might not sound like much to people nowadays who are used to buying everything online, but that's a big deal to knife people.
How about for a company that's been around for just 10 years to build a reputation like that?
Yeah. And that reputation is what keeps us in business. Yeah. There's a lot of people making low quality knives, and there's not much room for those people, more people doing that. So the only reason we're in business is because of that reputation.
So when you have clients calling, and let's say they're collectors, are they looking to collect every single knife that you guys put out? Or are there specific designs or looks or styles that they go for?
Yeah, there are hundreds of different styles. We call them patterns of knives. And some people collect certain patterns, like military knives, for example, or trappers, or jackknives, so on and so forth. Or some people like particular handles, so they doesn't care what the pattern is. They just like jig bone handles, so they buy jig bone knives.
Well, no. Another question that I kind of came up with while you're talking about that is, do you have a certain pattern that you're constantly making? That's like the popular, the Coca-Cola, or do you
Yeah.
or do you say, you know what, after this run, that's it, we're going to constantly have, well, I guess here's another question, sorry to overload you. How many different knives are you guys putting out at one time? How many different products? Is it one or two styles? Is it 4 or 5? Is it what
At a time?
at a time?
Well, I don't know. I mean, when we're producing a knife, we're producing several variations on the knife, whether it's different handle materials or different blade styles in that knife. But if you look at what we've made over the 10 years, if you count all the different variations, we've probably done thousands of different knives.
So is there a designer style that you guys...
Yeah, so one of our most popular knives, and many people might be familiar with it, is called a Barlow. And a Barlow is it has a frame similar to this one, excuse me, but it has an elongated bolster, so this is called a bolster. And it has an elongated bolster on it, and typically in the bolster is stamped or forged the name of the company. So ours say TC or NF, so Tidiute Cutlery or Northfield Cutlery. Those are two of our brands, but many of the old cutleries made these knives, these Barlow knives, and they were designed to be a working man's knife, and a knife that you could throw in your pocket, and it was going to be built durably, and you're not going to worry about using it.
Wow.
And that, for some reason, that style of knife has come back, and when we say we're going to make that knife, they're typically sold out before we even start producing the knife, months in advance.
That's incredible. Yeah. And Deb, you're familiar with Barlow. You set your Barlow when you worked with Jim, decided to work with Becker, so that's no different kind of Barlow, maybe.
Yes.
Sorry. What's next for you guys? What's ahead for the next 10 years?
I don't know. We'll just keep doing what we're doing. We enjoy recreating history, these pocket knives, and as long as people continue to enjoy them and purchase them and use them, we'll keep doing it.
Is how much of the next set of designs are based off of what you guys want to do? How much of it's based off of customer feedback or what the customers want? Like, will your dad say, will he be talking to a customer and the customer say, boy, it'd be great if you guys did this?
Well,
will he go, no, this is what we're going to do?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah,
You have to be realistic,
any collector
I guess,
of so anyone who collects something wants the most grandiose, and we just typically have to shake our heads a lot. But there are times when someone shows us a knife and we're like, hey, that's really cool. We'd love to make that. And maybe a year from then we do. Yeah.
All right. We're winding things down here. So real quick, why should somebody around here walk in and buy a knife from you?
Well, they don't even have to buy a knife from us. We really, enjoy folks just coming in and learning about how we make these knives, because you can walk into our door Monday through Friday while the shop is running. The whole place is lined in glass. You can walk around and take a tour absolutely for free. You don't need to buy a knife, and you can see something that's being done that no one else is doing.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Deb?
It's
Good
made
job.
in the USA, and that's so very important today. And it's important to collectors. It's important to our job, and how we help to promote that, encourage that, and buy from the people locally is very important to us, and we're very happy to have them here.
I think it's amazing you have 24 people down there working
It's the
on
coolest place. It
is,
really
yeah.
is. I mean, you can watch it. All the equipment they've made themselves mostly. It's just a testament to the quality of product that his dad created in this business, and this continues on. So the next 10 years are great.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us this morning, taking
Thanks,
care of
man.
business.
Thank you.
All right. Final look at news coming up next.
I love to work it now.